Hello, I'm Dickie Arbiter in London.
And I'm Victoria Arbiter in New York, and you're watching Royal Report. Frequent viewers of Royal Report will know that this show in particular really does seek to add a context and common sense to the royal sphere. Those of you who are new, welcome. We're delighted to have you with us. But you'll see that this is a positive platform where we really want to celebrate members of the royal family, but pay attention to what it is that they do. We are not a news channel and we are not here for political debate. What we do want to do is add the facts to various situations and look at it from the royal family's point of view. Now, given we normally err on more positive types of royal news, we felt very strongly that we could not ignore what is happening in the Middle East. As I mentioned, we are not here to debate the political merits of what is happening, nor do we care to discuss the response to what is happening by those on the ground. What we do want to do is take a closer look at the royal family's response to the conflict in the Middle East and indeed their personal connection to the region. Now, shortly after the atrocities committed on October 7th, both the King and the Prince of Wales released strongly worded statements. Those won't have just been thrown out. Those will have been given a lot of thought, and there will have been a process to those statements being sent into the public domain. So, Dad, I would love to talk to you as someone who was behind the scenes, someone who has been there when strongly worded statements are being crafted. Perhaps you could talk us through how those came to be and all the checks and balances they would have had to go through before being made public.
Well, both statements were very strongly worded. They weren't actually either the King or the Prince of Wales and Princess of Wales standing up before a camera and making those statements. They were statements made on their behalf by representatives of their staff. Both statements referred to terrorism and what had happened in Israel on the 7th of October. Now, both statements would have had to go to Downing Street. They can't just release a statement like that, which is of a very sort of high political nature. It would have to go to Downing Street. It would have to be cleared by the Prime Minister before they are released. Now, we know full well that Hamas have been prescribed as a terrorist organisation by this government, by the United States, and by practically all the countries in the European Union. So the use of the word terrorism would have been approved by the Prime Minister before being uttered, or albeit in statement form, by both the King and the Prince of Wales. There are checks and balances, there are hoops. They can't just say what they want to say when they want to say it.
I think it is important to note that the King in particular has spent more than 4 decades promoting interfaith harmony. He has called for religious tolerance. He has urged communities of different faiths to live side by side. He's talked about unity through diversity, and he has really championed leaders of different faiths coming together to share their knowledge, to share their faith with each other, and for people to learn about tolerance and to be able to accept other people's faiths. Now, in this instance, I think it will have been very difficult in his position as head of state because he does preside over a population that includes Palestinians that have settled in the UK, that are second generation, that were born in the UK, and the same with the Jewish community. And so he won't have wanted to ostracize anybody. I think he came at this from a position of not wanting to take sides either. This was about promoting peace, calling for peace, trying to find resolution, but also offering his support and standing against terrorism. And I think it's very interesting. I did see that in 2013, a spokesperson from Clarence House said that the King had been studying Arabic in order to better understand the Quran. And it was back in 1993, I think he gave his first lecture on Islam and how there was so much misunderstanding between the Western world and Islam. And he has called really for people to understand Islam better and for people to not judge based on terrorist activities. he has also supported people of so many other different faiths. I think it was just in recent years that he commissioned portraits of Holocaust survivors. Last December, you may remember, he was at a Jewish community center where he was dancing with the seniors there. He was meeting Holocaust survivors. This is someone who has released messages in support of Eid. I think there is so much to learn from the king and his approach to this. And you have been around him, obviously, in person on many, many occasions. This is a man who loves to read. He loves to learn. He is fascinated by religion, and now he stands as the head of the Church of England. But what was your takeaway, Dad, from him in terms of being this person who has really sought to promote interfaith harmony, perhaps more important today than it's ever been before?
Well, interfaith harmony was a very key issue as far as he was concerned. It was very important to him because, look, in the United Kingdom, like many countries in the world, we are an interdenominational country. We are an interracial country. We have so many different races. We have so many different denominations. And he wants everybody not to move away from their own religions, but to tolerate others, to have Muslims to tolerate Judaism, to have Hindu tolerate other religions in that part of the world. It's very important to him. And by involving himself, going up and down the country, he did it a lot as the Prince of Wales, going up and down the country, visiting mosques, synagogues, churches, temples, you name it, he was there. And likewise when he visited countries abroad. And he is doing it as king. So it's not something that he was passionate about as Prince of Wales. He's passionate about it as a man, as a human being. And his various visits to the Middle East have been important to him, not just from an interracial point of view or a religious point of view, but because his grandmother, his father's mother, is buried there. And he went there a couple of times to pay respects to her, as did her great-grandson. Now the Prince of Wales go there. So it's an important part of the world to him, not just because it's Israel, but because what is actually happening in that part of the world, because he has good relations with so many of the countries in that part of the world that peace is important to him.
As you mentioned, it was in 2016, actually, that he was then Prince of Wales. He was first able to visit his paternal grandmother's grave. He was in Israel for the funeral of Shimon Peres, former Israeli president. He was back there in 2020. Again, he visited her grave. But in 2020, it's interesting. He was there to deliver a speech at the World Holocaust Forum, which was attended by 40 world leaders. The event was marking 75 years since the liberation of Auschwitz. And at the time, he said, the Holocaust was an appalling Jewish tragedy, but it was also a universal human tragedy, and one which we compound if we do not heed its lessons. Prince William went in 2018, and that was billed kind of as his one of the most challenging visits that he had ever conducted at that point in his royal career. And actually, he was the very first member of the royal family to be sent to Israel and sent to the Middle East in an official capacity. And his visit was incredible. He began in Jordan. Of course, the royal family and the Jordanian royal family have a very warm relationship. He then went to Israel. He also met with Palestinian leaders, and he also visited a refugee camp in the city of Ramallah before making a speech at the British Consul General's residence in Jerusalem. And at that point, he assured Palestinians that they had not been forgotten. And I think that in particular was very warmly received. He said, "My message tonight is that you have not been forgotten. I hope that through my being here and understanding the challenges you face, the links of friendship and mutual respect between the Palestinian and British people will go stronger." President Abbas subsequently told William during their meeting that he hoped his homeland would be a fully independent state by the next time he visited the Middle East. William responded by saying he hoped for peace in the region. And I think this speaks to a very smart approach from Prince William. Clearly, he learned from his grandmother, but learning from his father as well, because being politically neutral, none of the royal family are in a position to speak on a political level, but it's interesting that they keep together generation after generation after generation, promoting peace talks and hoping for peace. And yet, interestingly, the late Queen never visited the region. Why was that, Dad?
Well, the late Queen could only go where the government sent her. It's not a case of a member of the royal family putting their hand up and saying, I want to go to such and such a country. It's about government relations. It's about the government deciding where they want to send the head of state. Now, the closest the Queen ever got to Israel was Jordan, where she went to visit there in 1984. And she was taken by Prince Hassan after the first day of the ceremonial with King Hussein. She was taken by Prince Hassan, the king's brother, to the Jordan Valley. And from there, she was able to look out across, and he explained what was actually happening. And she did say, in comment to what was happening, how dreadful. And that's all we got out. I mean, I was there as a reporter. But that's the closest she got to Israel. She never went to Egypt. She went to Saudi Arabia. She went to Dubai, to Abu Dhabi, to Bahrain, to Kuwait. Went to most of the countries in that particular region, but never did Israel and never did Egypt or Lebanon.
I think it was quite interesting, Dad, wasn't it? During her trip to Saudi Arabia, she was declared an honorary man. And that's what allowed her to be able to carry out certain parts of her engagements. And again, she would have taken it in the way any visitor would to a country. She was very respectful of cultures, and that's what we see from the king as well. He has long viewed freedom of religion and religious diversity as the cornerstone of his role as monarch. Of course, at the coronation in observance of Shabbat, he invited the chief rabbi to stay at Marlborough House the night before the coronation because he was aware that he wouldn't be able to take a car to Westminster Abbey in the morning. But in the same instance, the king is also a noted supporter of the Palestinians. He's previously wished them freedom, justice, and equality, while, and this could be considered tricky terrain, repeatedly pressing the British government to do more to broker peace. And I think at the end of the day, peace is really something that the royal family feel that they can try to promote through their actions at home. What I'd like to do, though, as we come to a close on this show, is I would like to end on Prince Philip. In 1994, Prince Philip, who was a British naval officer during World War II, who was mentioned in dispatches for his bravery during World War II, he was in Israel for the first time. He was there for the ceremony at Yad Vashem that was honoring his mother and naming her righteous among the nations for her role in saving a Jewish family during World War II. He gave a very poignant speech, and almost 40 years on, his words are as meaningful and relevant today as they were then. He said, "We may dislike individual people. We may disagree with their politics and opinions, but that should never allow us to condemn their whole community simply because of the race or religion of its members." In closing, he said, "The Holocaust may be over, but there are altogether too many examples in the world today of man's capacity for inhumanity." And it's humanity, really, that we call on at this point to ask people to embrace, to remember as they're looking at appalling images flashing across television screens on social media. We have a long way to go in terms of brokering peace, but it is our response and it is our approach that informs how we're able to do that together. And as the King said, unity through our diversity. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Royal Report. Please do join us next time and make sure to click like, subscribe and ring the bell. We look forward to seeing you next time.